My brother is 18 or 19 months older than I am. I got married when I was 21. He did not get married until he was 39. So there was this long gap between us both having wives. And oftentimes I would go see him without my wife, and it would be like bachelor's weekend. We would eat, junk food and watch the movies we wanted to watch, and we would hunt and we would fish and we would adventure. I visited Gerald when he lived in the abandoned house at Matthews. I visited Gerald when he lived in the apartments, and I visited Gerald when he lived at Thornhill, which was a 16-room mansion down in Bolagee or Livingston, Alabama. And we just had great times and great adventures. Well, and my brother got married. And with his marriage, not only did he get a new wife, but he got a new cat. Missy, my brother's wife, had this cat. Now, I'm not really sure what the deal was with the cat. I was going to go visit them. They had moved into the little house on Brookland Curve down in Montgomery, Alabama. And I was coming into town either for a conference or maybe I was just going to spend the night and hunt with him the next day. But I was going to be arriving at the house and they weren't there. And I was going to let myself in and just, kind of do my thing till Gerald and Missy returned. And so they warned me about Missy's cat. Now, they said that she was poorly socialized. Well, I think basically to describe the cat, she's neurotic with a tablespoon of psychosis. I had been warned that it possibly suffered from PTHD, that's post-traumatic Hillier syndrome, or John and David, Missy's brothers. I don't know all the details. And I've only met John and David a couple of times and spent, probably less than 8 hours total with them on any one occasion, but we could hang out. Anyway, they're the brothers of this lady, and she had a cat, and as brothers and sisters cats will do, they probably didn't get along. So I walk into the house. And I walk into the house having been pre-warned that the cat may have a little bit of neuroticism going on with it. And as I walked into the house, I don't remember if I was on the phone. I really don't think it was when we had cell phones. Maybe I'd picked up the phone and had called my wife to let her know I was in Montgomery. But I was talking out loud, and the cat comes around the corner. And I look like my brother. My brother and my dad and one of my uncles, we have a striking resemblance to each other. And so I'm talking, and the cat is approaching me. And I look like my brother, and in lots of ways I sound like my brother, but the cat gets into, I guess, my scent cone, and all of a sudden goes crazy. It begins to arch its back and turn sideways and do that weird approach that cats do, and it begins to yowl, which is kind of a moan, a howl, and a growl at the same time. And I'm thinking, oh, wow, so Damien is here in the bed, in the living room with me. And I said, hey, cat, there's not a problem here. I'm supposed to be here. Well, the cat does this hissing, spitting thing, and I grabbed a throw pillow off the couch and threw it in front of the cat. Well, the cat jumps on this throw pillow and starts to shred it. So I grabbed a magazine and rolled it up. I needed something that was rigid. Now, I would have preferred a fire poker or some holy water, or maybe even a silver bullet. But I just used a rolled up magazine and went straight up Jason Bourne on the cat. The cat retreated into the bedroom, and I closed the door and left the cat in the bedroom. Now, from the cat's perspective, it's probably in there going, Father, there's an angry Jedi in the living room, Father. They had warned me about the cat, but apparently no one had warned the cat about me. So I come walking in the house, and I look like my brother. I sound like my brother. I looked and sounded safe. And then all of a sudden, this realization is, you're not who I thought you were. You were not who I expected you to be. And because the cat was not prepared for me, I was therefore not really prepared for the cat's reaction. And as this cat got aggressive, and I know better, and I should have known better then, but this type of aggression usually indicates insecurity or fear. The cat felt like I had invaded its space, and I felt like I had been attacked. We were occupying the same house. We're going to spend the night in the same house. We're going to live there for 2 or 3 days together. And everything was really, really cool until we got real close. You see, the cat thought she knew who I was until we got real close. Often we have to get real close to people before we discover who they really are. A principle we use when we talk about self-defense or survival tactics or Gracie Jiu-Jitsu or 10th Planet Jiu-Jitsu is proximity equals intensity. Whoever controls the distance controls the damage. And the closer you are, the more intense things are. The closer you are, the more intense the ability for love or passion or danger or violence or dissatisfaction or disappointment or hurt or betrayal or grief. And this is especially true if after we've gotten really, really close, I end up not being what you expected or who you expected, or I turn out not to be all that you expected or wanted me to be. Now, because of that disappointment, because of that shock, when life doesn't turn out like I expect it to, I suffer loss, and humans grieve all losses. Because of that disappointment, the cat used the only behaviors that a cat knew how to do to control the situation. Undoubtedly, when he had been confronted and tormented by David and John, he would spit and hiss and arch its back and growl, and possibly the boys would leave him alone or at least give him some ground. I didn't back off from the cat. When outnumbered or faced with a greater force, the Jedi will attack. So I grabbed the magazine and went straight up to Jason Bourne on the cat. And now we both feel threatened. We both feel attacked. It attacked me and I attacked it back. You see, what usually worked for both of us didn't work. Now, not only am I not who you thought I was, I'm not responding like you're used to people responding. I'm not responding like you thought I should respond or like you thought I would respond. And this created greater confusion, greater anger, greater fear, greater hostility, and greater aggression on the cat. You know, if you're used to people responding a certain way, if you're used to things working and they suddenly don't work, the level of frustration is almost inexplicable. You think about if you came home today and you picked up your remote control and you mashed a button and the ceiling fan came on rather than the TV. And then you hit another button and the microwave turned on rather than the TV. And then you hit another button and the garage door began to go up and down. Just think about what happens when our cell phones or our computers don't do what we want them to do. We're used to pressing these buttons and the buttons don't give us those reactions. Well, it creates a lot of frustration. It creates a lot of insecurity. It creates a lot of fear. And so here this cat is using behaviors that it's used to using to control people. Not only am I not who it thought I was, I'm not responding the way other people have responded to it. And now we've got this terrible situation between me and the psycho cat. Here I am in the house with the house panther. And often we walk right into these situations and we are trapped in a living room or a hallway, and we're trapped before we even realize it. You see, I had a right to be there. I was a guest. I had a key. But in the cat's perception, something was not right. Now, probably, if you just really go down to it, the cat lived there and I didn't. So the cat was probably more correct than I was, because I was indeed an interloper, an invader, a trespasser, or just a visitor. I was probably wrong, and the cat was probably right. But it's a cat. So here's a glass to get over it, and here's a straw to suck it up. But using the cat as an example, you may come up with several response options. Response option number one, when people turn out to be not what you expected, or not who you expected, or they behave in ways that you expected they wouldn't or shouldn't. Number one, you can always do what you've always done. What you've always done has worked up to some point, or you still wouldn't be here. So you can hiss, or you can yowl, or you can spit, or posture, or stand your ground, or run away, or avoid, or throw a pillow, or find a weapon. Now, with cats, you roll up a magazine and that'll work. Any rigid object will work. But with people, we find a weapon. We weaponize their mistakes. We weaponize their traumas. We weaponize their weaknesses. We weaponize their boundaries. We weaponize their vulnerabilities. But you can do what you've always done. You just grab a weapon and change the dynamic here. Now, there's some other options, and I'm not saying that any one of these is the best, but you've got to look at the totality of the circumstances. And when you understand the totality of the circumstances, these may or may not be things that you should do. I'm just simply saying these are things that we can do. We often react this way. Number one is de-escalation. I'm going to do whatever it takes to make the cat feel safe. Now, in all honesty, this has got to be reciprocal. The cat should be thinking about me. How do I make this guy feel comfortable in my home? Or I should be thinking about the cat. Ideally, in these confrontation situations, when people turn out not to be who we expect them to be, you should have the reciprocity that we both behave maturely. But the only person I control in this dynamic is me. I don't control the other person. I definitely don't control the cat. So I only control me. And so what the cat should do, what the cat should have done, what the cat ought to do, that's not even open for discussion. But I look at this cat's history. I look at the fact that this cat has this anxiety, this enduring vulnerability concerning strangers. And when I say strangers, anyone that's not Gerald and anyone that's not Missy. Now I look at this and go, oh, wow, this cat's not used to people who aren't Gerald and Missy, so I absolutely capitulate. Now, the cat could not consider these options because, number one, it lacked sufficient mental, emotional sophistication to do anything other than what cats do the way cats do them. And so the impetus was on me. You see, there's no amount of reassurance that I'm going to give this cat who is neurotic and traumatized. There's no amount of intellectual ability to get this cat out of the emotional fight-flight response. And so the only thing I can do is capitulate. I can leave. I go wait in the car till Jill and Missy get home. I could get a hotel room. I'd sleep in my car. In some cases, the burden is on me to do whatever it takes to help the person who feels vulnerable feel safe. Now, I agree that that's an extreme response, but sometimes it's the necessary one, and it's okay. You have to consider people's enduring vulnerabilities. Now, I'm not telling you that you become a prisoner to people's delusions. We don't enter people's delusions. I'm not saying that you get controlled by people's obsessions, their paranoias, and I'm not even saying that you become a prisoner to people's rituals. We're assuming that there's a capacity here for both people to be somewhat healthy and normal. But as long as it's not an extreme situation where you're falling into a psychosis with somebody, you may just have to say, hey, what does it take to make you feel comfortable? What does it take to make you feel safe? And I'm going to do that. We're not going to fall victims to delusions, obsessions, and rituals. I'm simply going to do an attempt to reassure the cat and reset its expectations. I'm not who you thought I was, but neither am I who you think I am. I'm not Gerald and I'm not Missy, but I'm not an intruder. I'm a guest. I'm an extended family member. I've got a right to be here. I'm a visitor. You don't have to be afraid. You can be afraid, but you don't have to be afraid. Now, that requires enough reason on the part of the cat to overcome emotion. You have to have reason over emotion. You've got to override the fight-flight response. In this case, I don't think the cat can do that. And in some cases, people can't do that. But one option is to de-escalate. Another option is to escalate. And that's what I did. I met threat with threat, force for force. In fact, I added some force. In my mind, and it's a scary and dangerous place, but in my mind, hey, your behavior has consequences. I walked in here and I'm harmless. But just because I didn't live up to your expectations, you decided to attack me. Well, guess what? There's a price to pay for that. Now, you should not have the ability to make me angry. You should not have the ability to make me violent. But at the same time, I'm not going to be passive if you choose to be aggressive or attack me. Now, in this case, we're not going to be friends. But I'm also not going to be attacked or controlled by your hostile behavior. You see, you got this cat that for whatever traumas it has experienced, it has learned to control people with this hostile behavior. and it felt more threatened when I didn't respond the way it expected me to do. Now, I didn't run away, but I stood my ground. I met force with force. Boundaries work both ways. I'm so tired of people coming in and explaining to me that they're in this difficult relationship because somebody's violated boundaries and they can't understand why their boundaries have not worked on the other person. But boundaries work both ways. And so the cat panicked and ramped things up. And that's often the way things happen when manipulation doesn't work. That irritability, that panic, that confusion. When you don't use the button and you use the button and it doesn't work the way it always worked, you tend to ramp things up. Well, as the cat escalated, I escalated. I'm not saying it was right, but I'm saying in some situations, your choices, your behavior has consequences. And although you can't make me violent, you can't make me attack you, I also don't have to be passive and become your victim if your behavior is hostile and toxic. The third response option is probably just to escape or retreat. Now, that's different than de-escalation. It's not capitulation. It's just I'm going to set a boundary that whoever manages the distance manages the damage. I'm going to avoid the confrontation. Now, one option would have simply been for me to go into the guest bedroom and close the door. But if I go into the guest bedroom and close the door, then when I walk down the hall to go to the men's room, I'm going to have a confrontation. We're going to start all over again. And so what I had to do was decide who I'm going to let control the whole house, me or the cat. And I had the rolled up magazine and the advantage of opposable thumbs and a prefrontal cortex. So the cat was sequestered into the bedroom till its owners came home. Not an ideal response, but sometimes you've got to mitigate the damage by controlling the distance. In a perfect scenario, both of us should be allowed our healthy space. Now, you talk about this interloping dilemma with the cat. It's not a perfect comparison. I don't want to be trapped in my room, and you really don't want to be trapped in your room. And although what I did to the cat was both unkind and unfair to trap it in another room, it's the only solution I could come up with because I didn't want to have to deal with a house panther every time I walked out in the hallway. With people, ideally, we should both have safe places. We should both have safe spaces. Okay, you're not who I thought you were. I'm not who you thought I was, but we've got to get along. Where are our ideal? Where is our unacceptable? And where can we make our peace? Now, I'm not really a fan of the overreaction that I see in some spouses where the spouse says, "You're not who I thought you were. You can't be in our bedroom." That really doesn't work for me. If there's something so wrong, if there's something so bad, if there's something so toxic, if you're so afraid that they can't be in the bedroom, they probably shouldn't be in the house. Now, maybe I'm wrong on that, but there's this extreme overreaction that says, "Oh, you can live in the house and you can pay the bills and I can be on your health insurance, but you can't be in the bedroom. Pick one." Now, there may be a time where you have a cooling off period where both of you have your safe space, but that is not sustainable. And maybe that's not exactly right, but that's how I see it. Now, when we talk about these response options, do what you've always done, de-escalate, escalate, or avoid, you make your choice on your response option, and it's contingent on the totality of the circumstances. It's contingent on the reasonableness of both parties, the emotional stability of both parties, the maturity of both parties, the nature of the relationship, and absolutely the level of toxicity. My relationship with this cat's never been fixed. And although I am not Gerald, who the cat expected or wanted me to be, neither was I a burglar, a mass murderer, a trespasser, a boundary violator, or even a cat burglar. I was neither the nurturer nor the nemesis. And it wasn't a good thing or a bad thing. I just wasn't who the cat expected me to be or who the cat wanted me to be. And in all actuality, this wasn't good or bad. It was just unfortunate. I was not who she expected me to be. I was not who she wanted me to be. As it turns out, I wasn't Gerald. I wasn't David. I wasn't John. I wasn't Missy. I wasn't a burglar. I wasn't a bad guy. I was just someone different. And in our relationships, we must give grace. We must accept the presence of other people and don't overreact to their inability or inadequacies to not be who we want or who we expect them to be. Learn to get along with people, or at least tolerate the fact that although I'm not this, I'm also not that. I'm not who you expected me to be, but I'm not your ex-boyfriend. I'm not your ex-spouse. I'm not your former boss. I'm not the people you used to go to church with. I'm not this. I'm not that. I'm not them. It's okay for me just to be different.